Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless Official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Victoria Newman's heart pounded violently in her chest as she stormed down the hallway of the luxurious Los Angeles hotel, her designer heels clicking angrily against the polished marble floor, her hand clenched tightly around the spare keycard she had somehow managed to get her hands on. She didn't care about rules, privacy, or the so-called dignity of her adult daughter. What she cared about right now was answers, truth, and the gnawing suspicion that Claire was hiding something from her, something that cut so deep and personal that Victoria could not ignore it any longer. All the whispers in her head, the worries that had been growing for weeks, and the disquieting puzzle pieces she had been trying to put together had all led her here, to this very moment. As she approached the door to the hotel room, she could feel the weight of dread pressing against her chest like a stone, almost suffocating her, but her determination to know the truth drove her forward, her trembling hand raising the card toward the scanner. With a soft electronic beep, the lock disengaged, and the heavy door gave way beneath her push, swinging open into the darkness of the room with a creak that seemed to echo louder than thunder in her ears. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast shadows across the messy bed, and at first Victoria's eyes struggled to process what they were seeing, but then clarity struck like a bolt of lightning, her breath caught in her throat as she froze, her fingers curling against the frame of the door for support. There they were. Claire, her daughter, and Holden Novak, the man Victoria had been suspicious of from the very start, tangled together beneath the disheveled sheets, their bodies pressed close in a way that left no room for innocence or doubt. The sight was horrifying not just because of what it revealed, but because of the way it shattered everything Victoria had been trying to believe about Claire's progress, her healing, her chance at building a new and better life after the dark shadows of her past. Claire's golden hair spilled across the pillow, her face peaceful in sleep, while Holden's arm was draped possessively across her, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. They looked like lovers, not allies, not friends, not two people casually caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Victoria's stomach churned violently, bile rising in her throat as the room began to tilt around her, the walls closing in, the air thick with the stench of betrayal and dread. For a moment, she couldn't move. She stood there, wide-eyed, staring at the scene before her as if it were some twisted painting from a nightmare, her body numb, her mind screaming at her to react but paralyzed by the sheer shock of it all. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, for this wasn't just about Claire's choices, this was about Victoria's own fear that history was repeating itself, that once again a man had wormed his way into the fragile life of someone she loved, manipulating and controlling until the damage was irreparable. Holden had always been too smooth, too clever, too ready with excuses and charming smiles. Victoria had never trusted him, and now she knew why. Her voice, when it finally tore free from her throat, was barely more than a strangled whisper, though it shook with all the fury and anguish building inside her. "Oh my God!" Claire, the sound was enough to stir movement in the bed, and Claire's eyes fluttered open, confusion flickering across her face before dawning horror replaced it as she realized what her mother was seeing. Holden stirred too, blinking groggily, his arm instinctively tightening around Claire as if to shield her from Victoria's searing glare. "Mom?" Claire's voice cracked with disbelief, her cheeks flushing scarlet as she struggled to sit up, pulling the blanket around her trembling body. "What are you doing here? How did you? Don't you dare ask me that." Victoria snapped, her voice rising now, filling the room with sharp, cutting tones that left no space for excuses. "How could you do this? With him? After everything, after all I'd done to try and protect you, after all the pain we've been through as a family, you let this man into your bed?" Her voice broke on the last word, the raw anguish spilling out against her will, tears pricking the corners of her eyes though she fought them back with fury. Holden, ever the opportunist, tried to speak, his voice smooth even in the face of disaster. "Victoria, you're misunderstanding. Don't you speak to me." Victoria cut him off with a venomous glare, her finger trembling as she pointed at him. "You think I don't see what you're doing? You think I don't know your type? You've manipulated her, you've taken advantage of her, and you dare lie in her bed as if you belong there? You're disgusting, Holden. Absolutely disgusting. Claire's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling as she tried to explain, though no words seemed capable of bridging the gaping chasm opening between mother and daughter. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, Victoria hissed, her voice lowering but no less deadly. Do you have any idea how horrifying this is for me? To walk in and see you, my daughter, wrapped up in the arms of a man who has done nothing but raise red flags since the moment he entered our lives? You're supposed to be rebuilding yourself, Claire. You're supposed to be healing, learning to trust again, learning to stand on your own. And this is how you choose to do it? By crawling into bed with someone like him? The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner and the frantic beating of Victoria's heart as she stared at them, waiting for an explanation that could never possibly satisfy the devastation she felt. Victoria's chest rose and fell in uneven bursts, each breath like fire burning her lungs, her mind racing through memories and warnings she had ignored, all the little signs that had been gnawing at her conscience yet she had chosen to push aside in the desperate hope that Claire was moving forward and not slipping back into destructive patterns. She thought of the way Claire had been evasive lately, how she had insisted on privacy, how her phone calls ended too quickly when Victoria approached. How her eyes darted nervously whenever Holden's name came up in conversation, and suddenly all those puzzle pieces slammed together into a horrifying picture that made Victoria feel like a fool for not trusting her instincts sooner, because now the truth was right in front of her, undeniable, and it tore at her soul like claws. She wanted to scream at Claire, to shake her and demand how she could betray her trust in this way, but at the same time she wanted to gather her daughter into her arms and drag her far away from Holden, far away from this hotel room, far away from the temptation that was poisoning everything she had worked so hard to build. Claire, however, sat trembling, tears streaking her cheeks as she pulled the blanket tighter around herself, her lips parting as though she wanted to speak, to explain, yet no words came out strong enough to compete with the tidal wave of Victoria's fury. Holden shifted uncomfortably beside her, his face tightening with the realization that Victoria was not someone he could charm out of a confrontation, not this time, not when she stood there like a lioness defending her cub, eyes blazing with righteous fury, her entire presence radiating the energy of someone who would burn the world to ashes to protect her family. You don't understand, Claire whispered finally, her voice trembling like glass on the verge of shattering, and Victoria let out a sharp, humorless laugh that carried no warmth, only bitter disbelief, the sound bouncing off the walls of the expensive hotel suite and making Holden stiffen. Oh, I understand perfectly, Victoria shot back, her voice cracking under the strain of holding herself together. I understand that you're lying in bed with a man who has no business being in your life, let alone in your heart or your room, and I understand that every instinct I had about him was right, because here you are, proving me right in the most devastating way possible. Her hands shook as she stepped into the room, slamming the door shut behind her, the sound reverberating like a gavel striking judgment, and she advanced slowly, deliberately, her heels sinking into the plush carpet as if each step carried the weight of the fury and disappointment that was consuming her. Holden sat up straighter, trying to maintain some control over the situation, his arm brushing against Claire as though reminding her of his presence, as though trying to anchor her to him, and that small gesture sent another jolt of fury through Victoria's veins, for she saw it not as comfort but as control, manipulation, the very thing she had feared all along, and she pointed a shaking finger at him, her words dripping venom. You will not touch her. Do you hear me? You will not so much as breathe in her direction after tonight, Holden Novak. Whatever game you're playing, whatever twisted plan you thought you could pull over on her, it ends now. Holden's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as though he wanted to push back, to argue, but even he seemed to sense that this was not a battle he could win with words, not against the full force of Victoria Newman's wrath, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw a flicker of unease pass across his face. Claire, however, shook her head frantically. Clutching the blanket against her chest, her voice breaking as she finally found the courage to speak louder. Stop it, Mom. Please stop. You don't understand, it's not like that, it's not what you think, Holden isn't, but Victoria cut her off, her own voice rising in a crescendo of anguish that made Claire flinch. Don't you dare defend him to me. Don't you dare stand there and act like this is normal, like this is acceptable, because it isn't, Claire. You are my daughter, and I have fought tooth and nail to get you back, to help you rebuild your life, to give you a second chance after everything you've been through, and this, she gestured wildly toward the bed, toward Holden, toward the mess of tangled sheets that seemed to mock her with every glance, this is how you repay me? By throwing yourself into the arms of a man who is only going to destroy you? The tears that streamed down Claire's face now were endless, her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in her hands, muffling a sob that tore through the silence of the room, and for one fleeting moment Victoria's rage faltered, replaced by the aching pain of a mother watching her child crumble before her eyes. Yet even then she could not let go of the fury because she knew, that Holden was at the center of this, that without him Claire would not be in this position, that everything about his presence screamed danger and deceit. Victoria's mind spun with questions she was too afraid to voice. How long had this been going on? Had Claire been lying to her for weeks? Had Holden lured her into this situation deliberately, manipulating her vulnerabilities, exploiting her fragile trust after the horrors she had endured with Jordan and the past? Every possibility sent daggers of guilt and fear through Victoria's chest, because she blamed herself as much as she blamed him, for not protecting Claire better, for not seeing it sooner, for letting her daughter slip through her fingers once again. She thought of all the nights she had lain awake, worrying about Claire, vowing that she would never let her get hurt again, and now here they were, on the precipice of yet another disaster that could shatter their fragile family forever. You don't get to choose who I love, Claire choked out suddenly, her voice raw and sharp, the declaration cutting through Victoria like a blade, and Holden's eyes flickered with something Victoria despised, satisfaction, triumph, the glimmer of a man who knew he had just gained leverage, however small, in a battle that was far from over. Victoria's breath caught, her chest tightening painfully, because hearing those words from Claire, her Claire, felt like betrayal all over again, like a dagger driven straight into her heart by the very person she had fought so hard to protect. Love? Victoria spat the word with venom, her voice trembling as she shook her head violently, unable to believe what she was hearing. You call this love? Claire, you don't know what love is if you think this is it. This isn't love, it's manipulation, it's control, it's a trap, and you're falling right into it. Claire sobbed harder, her body curling in on itself as she clung to the blanket like a shield, while Holden finally spoke again, his tone calm, measured, and infuriatingly confident. Victoria, I care about Claire. More than you're willing to admit. You may not like it, you may not approve, but what's between us is real, and you can't stop her from making her own choices. That was the final straw. Victoria lunged forward, her hand snapping out to grab Holden by the collar of his shirt, yanking him toward her with surprising strength born of rage and fear, her face inches from his as she snarled, You listen to me, and you listen good, if you ever come near my daughter again, if you so much as look at her in a way that I don't approve of, I will make it my mission to destroy you. You think you're clever, you think you can outmaneuver me? Think again, Holden. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Holden didn't flinch, but his smirk faltered, and Victoria released him with a shove that sent him stumbling back against the headboard, the tension in the room snapping like a live wire. Claire screamed, Stop it, Mom. Please, just stop, her voice hoarse with desperation, but Victoria turned to her, her eyes blazing, her heart breaking. I can't stop, Claire, not when I see you walking straight into danger. I won't just stand by and let you throw your life away for someone who doesn't deserve you. The room was suffocating now, the air thick with tears and accusations, with the scent of betrayal and fear lingering in every corner, and Victoria realized that nothing she said tonight would erase what she had seen, nothing could put the pieces back together the way they were before she opened that door. The horrifying image of Claire and Holden together in that bed would haunt her forever, a scar on her heart that no amount of explanations or apologies could erase, and as she stood there trembling, her hands clenching and unclenching at her sides, she understood that this was only the beginning of a battle that would tear them all apart. She thought of Nick, of Victor, of Nikki, of how her family would react when they found out, and a chill ran through her as she imagined the storm that was about to descend upon them all. Because what started in this hotel room tonight would not stay here, it would ripple outward, shattering lives and exposing secrets, and nothing would ever be the same again. Victoria's pulse hammered in her ears as she took in the aftermath of her own explosion, and though her fury had not lessened, the sheer exhaustion of holding herself together was starting to gnaw at her bones, her chest tight with the realization that nothing she could say or do in this moment would undo what she had just seen. Nothing could take away the image of Holden's arm draped across Claire in that bed. Nothing could erase the chilling knowledge that her daughter was caught in something far darker than a mere lapse in judgment. Her mind churned with 1,000 thoughts, half-formed strategies, and desperate questions, wondering whether she should call Victor immediately, whether she should pull Claire out of this hotel by force, whether she should confront Holden in front of the whole family and expose him for what she believed he truly was. But every option carried consequences that made her stomach twist even tighter, because as much as she wanted to believe she could fix this, she could already see the cracks spreading through everything around her. Claire sobbed softly into her hands, the sound shredding Victoria's heart even as her anger kept her rooted in place, and Holden sat silently now, his posture tense but not defeated, his eyes flickering with calculation as though he was already planning his next move, already plotting how to turn this night into another advantage for himself, and that thought alone made Victoria's blood boil hotter, because she could not shake the certainty that he was playing a long game she had yet to fully understand. She imagined how the press would salivate if they caught even a whisper of the scandal. The daughter Victoria had only just reclaimed from tragedy, now embroiled in a hotel scandal with a man who reeked of opportunism, and the thought made her clench her fists tighter, her knuckles whitening, because she could not allow that to happen, not after everything they had already endured under the public eye. "We're leaving," Victoria said finally, her voice low but steely, each word carrying the weight of command that brooked no argument, though her hands shook at her sides. She didn't care what Holden had to say, she didn't care about Claire's protestations, her only thought now was getting her daughter out of this room, away from this man, and back into a space where she could try, somehow, to reach her. Claire's head snapped up, her tear-stained face full of anguish as she cried, "No, Mom, I'm not leaving with you, not like this, not when you're treating me like I can't think for myself," and the defiance in her tone was another stab of betrayal, another reminder that Claire was slipping through her fingers, and Victoria's throat tightened with panic as she realized that the harder she pushed, the more Claire clung to Holden, the more she dug in her heels, and that was exactly what Holden wanted. He wanted the wedge, the division, the chaos that would make Claire turn away from her family and deeper into his arms, and Victoria swore to herself in that moment that she would not let him win, not now, not ever. "Fine," Victoria bit out, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion, "stay here tonight if that's what you're determined to do, but know this, Claire, I will never accept this, I will never accept him, and I will fight tooth and nail to protect you from him, even if it means protecting you from yourself." With that she spun on her heel, storming toward the door, her tears finally spilling freely down her cheeks as she yanked it open, the cool hallway air rushing in like a slap to the face, but before she stepped out she turned back, her eyes locking onto Holden's with a glare that could have cut stone, and she delivered her final warning in a voice low enough to chill the blood, "You may think you've won tonight, but this isn't over. You'll regret ever crossing me, Holden, I promise you that." Then she was gone, the door slamming shut behind her, the echo reverberating through the hall as she stalked away, her chest heaving, her heart breaking, and her mind already racing ahead to what must come next, because this battle had only just begun, and if Holden thought he could outmaneuver a Newman, he was about to learn just how wrong he truly was. Victoria's heels struck the polished floor of the hotel hallway with sharp, furious clicks as she stormed toward the elevator, each step carrying the weight of rage, betrayal, and bone-deep fear, her breath ragged in her throat, her hands trembling so violently that she pressed them into fists just to steady herself, her mind replaying the horrifying image of Claire and Holden together in that bed again and again until she thought she might go mad. It wasn't just what she had seen, it was what it symbolized, what it threatened to do to everything she had fought for, every fragile step forward Claire had made since returning to the family, every moment of hope Victoria had clung to that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild something strong and real after years of pain, and now it all teetered on the edge of collapse because Holden Novak had inserted himself like a poison, twisting Claire's heart and warping her judgment, and Victoria could feel in her bones that this was not some fleeting mistake but the beginning of a war for her daughter's soul.